Welcome back, Geico OutKick Studios. I hope all of you are having fantastic Fridays, wherever you may be across this great country or this great land. We are joined now by Geoff Schwartz. I got to start with this, Geoff. I was horribly troubled by what appeared to be a flooding going on with your pool. Everything was so pristine and perfect not long ago, and then I see you on social media. What happened?
Okay, so we've got to the bottom of it. There's a builder up the road from us, and we're a lower elevation than him. He built a duplex, and he put 12 downspouts on the duplex as usual, right? But he all routed them to the back corner of his lot. Under the fence, there's 9 of them. We saw like the 12-inch drain pipes under the property going to nowhere. They don't go to a drain. They literally drain directly into my neighbor behind my fence, the other neighbor behind my fence, and into my yard, like straight down. And so our landscapers have fixed it on our end, but the builder, he's gotten strongly worded phone calls, emails, and text messages from my wife and I. And
who was angrier, your wife or you?
So when it happened the first time, it actually happened again. I didn't post a video of it. It happened 2 nights ago again. She was really upset. And then I was like, okay, it happened one time, like we'll get it fixed. And the pool, kind of started to light up again, and we had the pool guy over to kind of help us fix it. And then when it happened again the other night, I was pissed because I went and bought flood barriers from Home Depot until the landscaping can be fixed. And so in the middle of a thunderstorm, lightning and thunder, it rained 3 inches at the airport that night, like 2 nights ago. And I'm out there for 30 minutes with these flood barriers, trying to make sure the water doesn't get into the pool. And I did a decent enough job. We got more mud in this. I was pissed. I'm still upset about it because now that we investigated why this is happening, it's upsetting. But the builder, he didn't want to do anything about it. So I don't know what recourse we have other than what we've done now. We've basically stopped it. It rained last night, and there shouldn't be a problem.
My wife would have been, by the way, way more angry than I would have been. So I was curious what sternly worded letters or conversations might have happened there. All right, so Major League Baseball is back. How excited are you for baseball to be back? I know you're a Giants fan. They're playing the Dodgers right now. And honestly, given the Giants' status, a 60-game season is probably good for you as opposed to 162, because anything can happen in a 60-game season. And so it's an advantage in theory for teams that aren't as good, whereas it's a disadvantage because you want to play as many games as possible if you've got a really talented roster like the Dodgers do. How much is baseball being back, soon to be followed by the NHL and the NBA, a substantial return to normalcy?
Well, that's what it's always been about for me as sports returning, especially football. I always looked at it as like a return to normalcy, right? That we have some sort of normal life. I know there's no fans and, there's some crowd noise being pumped in. And it's a little different, but it signals that it's working, right? The bubble that the players are putting themselves in, which are not really in a bubble in Major League, is working. And this gives me some hope, obviously, that we can see the same success happen with NFL and college football as well, is that, the players can be responsible outside of the facility to make sure that they're healthy enough to play the games. And so that's what I'm excited about. With NBA back next week, and it's all coming. I watched preseason NBA the other day. I'm excited for it to be back, and we're finding ways to get this done. And the 60-game season is odd. It's weird. It's different. There's not much takeaways from this season. You mentioned the Giants are terrible. There are some bad teams that could get hot. The Rockies have the ability, I think, in the NL West to just, if their pitching is a little better than last year, they can hit. There's these weird situations where you can find a team getting hot for 60 games. Look at last year, even the opposite happened. The Nationals, I think, were like 13-37 through 50 games, and they would never make the playoffs, obviously. So I'm just glad it's back. I'm glad to gamble on baseball. I guess I'm not really, because it sucks to gamble on baseball, but I'm glad we have some sports to talk about.
Let's circle back around to the NFL, which you just mentioned there for short term. You have players showing up to get tested. And you mentioned something that I think is interesting, and I've talked about a lot on this show, the difference between the NBA bubble, where basically everybody has to be inside of one self-contained area, and Major League Baseball, which is going to allow players to basically continue to have their regular lives, travel around much more than the NFL would be to be able to play games. how optimistic are you based on what baseball has done, at least so far, about what the NFL could be capable of in terms of allowing guys to have normal lives but also playing the games?
Yeah, it's very positive. I think that the other positive to look at is college football for the most part. Players are back on campus, they're working out, and they're staying healthy. Right, we've only had 5 or 6 schools really with high positive test numbers. So it does, and you mentioned baseball as well. So it does give me hope that NFL can make this work, and I think they will make it work. It's important this year for players to understand that they have to take some responsibility off the field to make sure that they stay healthy, right? Like, look, I know you like going to a bar or a club, and those might not even be open in the states that you're in, even though there's definitely, like in Charlotte, I mean, bars can't be open, but there's a lot of bars that are just serving like grilled cheese sandwiches, so they're a restaurant now, so they're open. So, I mean, there's ways to get by it, but NFL players have just got to make sure that personally, and cultural players as well, just stay out of situations that can get them infected. I mean, it's not, is it fair? Probably not, especially in the college, college age kid to not, go to a bar on a Saturday night after a game. I get that, but there's some personal responsibility here. So I hope the players do that. And look, the testing is going to be firm in the NFL. The one thing that I find interesting about both, I think, NCAA football and NFL, and I'm not sure that this is being adopted, but the idea of, if you've been in contact with someone who has COVID, who tests positive, do you then have to be quarantined? And if you look at what the NFL suggested, it seems that you would not have to be. It says you have to be in contact with someone without a mask for more than 10 or 15 minutes to then have to sit out for 2 weeks, even if you don't test positive, right? Your buddy does. And the way it's set up, I don't think they're going to have to do that. But that's kind of curious to me, is like, what if your quarterback gets sick? Does the whole quarterback room have to miss 2 weeks? I don't think that's going to be the case, but that's the one question I have kind of remaining with the testing and protocols for both college and NFL is what happens in that situation? Because obviously, if you lose a quarterback room for 2 weeks, you have to forfeit those weeks.
How much of I'm curious, you've been in a lot of these rooms. How much of preparation on an NFL game week could be done remotely?
I think you have to be in the room with your coach.
For how many hours? Like, how many hours do you need to be there? And you're talking about not for like your head coach, but your position coach.
Yeah, your position coach. I mean, probably, we're in there during the season. I mean, 2 hours a day, maybe. We're not in there terribly long during the season. I mean, training camp is a lot more film, and a lot more. And the reason why you have to be in person is so you pay attention. We've all been on Zoom calls, right? I mean, you got about 45 minutes at the most where you can pay attention, and that's like if you don't even look at your phone for 45 minutes. I mean, I'm doing seminars and I'm looking at my phone in the middle of a Zoom seminar just because it's right there, right? Well, in the meeting room you don't have your phone, right? You have to focus on what's in front of you, especially for younger players. Younger players need to have, in my opinion, a coach there, and it feels like they're going to try to do their best in the NFL to have meetings in person, just obviously social distance and apart. So team meetings are probably not going to happen this year. I don't know any facility that can. Even the Vikings. That Peter King did a good article. Your best friend the other day did an article. He's in Minnesota. They had 172 seat auditorium, which is a lot in the NFL. That's a giant team meeting room, and they can only fit 47 players in there with social distancing. That's not even enough, obviously, for a seat. So I think team meetings will be via Zoom. I think position meetings and group meetings, offensive, defense, will be in person.
How well do you think you would have listened when you were a young NFL player about limiting your risk factors off the field? Because obviously the benefit of what the NFL is doing and also what Major League Baseball is doing is guys can kind of have their normal life. You get to live at your house, like you can hang out with your family, your limited friend circle, things like that. And I would think that would have a lot of appeal. But how well do you think as a young player you would have followed the rules about not being very socially active?
Well, me would have been fine. I don't go out. It's my wife I'm living with who used to go out 3 nights a week.
And also, by the way, sorry to cut you off, but also, by the way, you were a guy hoping to make a team, whereas you're willing to take less risks because if you do something wrong, you're probably like, oh, my God, I'm done here. Whereas others couldn't. But that's funny. Your wife's out 3 days a week. That's a good point. It's not just the player. It's whoever you're living with or whoever you're hanging out with.
Yeah. So, when we were living, my second year in the NFL, we're living together in uptown Charlotte, which is downtown. And, she's going out, three nights a week, maybe, Friday, Saturday, maybe twice a week, Friday, Saturday, maybe Thursday and whatnot. And so that would be, when I didn't go out, I'm playing football. And so, that would be the concern, obviously, is that she went out. But like I said, I'm really interested to see, and obviously, there's 32 different counties the NFL is playing football in, and every county kind of has their own restrictions right now. And I do wonder if counties where really things are restricted, right? No bars open, no indoor dining, no bowling alleys, no movie theaters, things like that. Whether or not those players in those counties are just easier. It's easier for them to just avoid people and avoid contracting COVID versus places where you're allowed to go out and you're allowed to be close, in close proximity with other individuals.
What about college? Let's go to college football. We're talking to Geoff Schwartz. A lot of times he guest hosts, former NFL veteran. Would you have in college, let's say you're 18 or 19 years old, you get to a college campus. Here's what I was told. I talked to a bunch of people around college football, and they said the early positive tests that they were getting on college campus were not actually from working out or football-related activities in any way. It was guys getting back on campus and going out to local bars, local restaurants,
right.
frat houses, chasing girls like would usually happen for 18 and 19-year-olds out there. And so a big part of this was the juniors and the seniors on the team set down the freshmen and the sophomores and said, hey, listen, knuckleheads, like this is big for us. We want to play. We want to go to the NFL. We want to, be able to try to win a championship. And we understand, you're 17, 18, 19 years old. You haven't spent a lot of time on campuses, but we are going to, self-police, for lack of a better way of phrasing it. And it was the individual team leadership that's helped to cause those numbers to go down. Now, that's easier said than done in the summer when the campuses aren't filled with as many kids as they might be in August and September. What would it have been like in Oregon? I know I'm asking you to go back in time.
Yeah.
And how well do you think that style of leadership will take root on a college campus to keep college football potentially able to happen?
Well, you're right about it being easier when no one's there. And, it's funny that college presidents, said, hey, we're only going to play this season if we're on campus. And we've seen that not be the case. I mean, Cal is going online only. And then their athletics department put out a statement saying, like, oh, we're still playing sports. Clemson announced. They're delaying, I think, on person instruction for at least a month, and of course they're going to still play football. So it's much easier to do all this when no one's on campus. To your point, and it would have been tough, I think, as an 18, 19, 20-year-old to not go out ever. At that age, you're excited to go on campus. You're excited to meet women. You're excited to kind of live. Because especially if you're a freshman, right? First time away from your parents.
Not only that, you've been locked up already. It's not even a typical freshman experience. You've been locked up since March, maybe, in high school.
Right. And so, I do think that, that's it would be tough. But I do think the veteran leadership is supremely important here. And you mentioned a lot of us and young players look up to older guys. If older guys told me, hey, man, we're not going out to bars this year. We're not going out and doing things. I think I would probably listen to them. But it's interesting because I go back to this, like if your campus is quote unquote open, which might not be a lot of them, but you don't have the bars open. I mean, what are you going to do to get yourself in trouble, right? I mean, we've seen now that bars have been the place that have kind of been super spreader for COVID. I mean, if that's not open, if movie theaters aren't open in your county, then you're really not going to find many places to get COVID unless, you have a lady friend over and she gets you sick. But there's not many opportunities to get sick, especially if no one's on campus. Because I think that I know the college presidents wanted to be strong on this, but if you're Cal, for example, and your football team is on campus and no one else is on campus, what's a better bubble than that, right?
Yeah.
You've no one around you and you're playing sports. And look, the truth is the money is so grand, and that's why everyone's playing. That's why some conferences are going conference-only schedule. Some are obviously trying to still find a way to make it work. And I understand, the SEC and ACC playing each other because it sounds silly that, Clemson can't play South Carolina, but Clemson can play Miami, right? Just like, okay, well, no, they should probably be able to play South Carolina still. So I get why they're doing that, but just it could be easier to stay healthy this year because campuses are closed.
Let's pretend that there's a vote, right? I want to start with college football. You played college football. What percentage of players do you think would vote and want to have a schedule that they play in the fall, college football?
100%.
Like, you think there's almost no one that would say, I don't want to do it?
Oh no, I think most players want. I think that if there's anyone who doesn't want them to play, it's some parents. I think that 100% everyone wants to play in the fall. They want to stay on schedule, especially if the NFL is on schedule. Look, I understand that some of these schools in the lower levels don't have the resources to really social distance. Because remember, if you do this properly, you need space on campus. You need to be able to rent, possible portable locker rooms and portable meeting rooms and put up tents and make things happen that you can't afford to do if you're a Division II or Division III school. The NFL is testing every day, which I think for 2 weeks is about right. It costs $75 million to test. I mean, it costs money, and so I get why some of these small schools can't play football, but the players want to play. And I saw something yesterday. John Canzano, who covers Oregon sports up in Portland, he said they had the Portland State head coach on, and they're obviously FCS, and they had a 100% vote. They'd rather cancel 2020 than play in the fall of 21. The spring of 21. So that tells you everything, because it throws everyone off their schedule. It throws you off the NFL draft schedule. Then you have to come back and play within 3 or 4 months if 2021 starts on time. So it's not. I think that's why there's a push. There's many reasons why there's pushing to play now. And we've had some positive vaccine news, which might not affect football, but just life in general, and maybe that's driving some of the excitement to get back to sports. Because by the time that hits, football might be over by the time we kind of get a full vaccine in the States. But some of these things are data keeps changing every day, and we get new news about COVID and whatnot. So I think that we're moving in the direction of playing football, especially when NFL's happening. College football, I think, is going to happen. I feel strong about that.
All right, you said 100% for college football, and those guys aren't getting paid. They're voluntarily choosing to play. I'm assuming it's like 100% plus then for the NFL, where it's even more imperative to play, because you know this better than almost anybody. Your career is likely to be very short in the NFL. So people say, if you didn't play this year, you make it up next year. That's not true, because a guy who might otherwise have played 4 years might instead play 3, right? Like, your body is not necessarily going to allow you to make money off. I would think almost every NFL player wants to play.
I think so too, but the NFL, the difference in the NFL is the family dynamic, right? Players have families, they have wives and spouses that might have autoimmune issues, I should say, that might lead them to suffer from COVID more than other people. So there's that to consider with the NFL side. But I would think that a majority do want to play. I've been kind of curious to see the way they've handled the PA has some of these negotiations. I think for the most part they've done a good job. I think the limit of practice time is ridiculous. There's no way you can get ready in 8 padded practices. I don't understand why they're pushing so hard to never practice. I just don't get it. But that's my concern, is that we're going to see a lot of injuries on the NFL side this year with only 8 practices. Yeah,
and for preseason, when you come out, and let's presume that there's going to be no preseason football, which seems to be the report, and there's going to be incredibly limited practices, and the NFL is going to come out and play week 1. Who's advantaged in that scenario? Because the defense is got to tackle, but the offense has got to be crisply executing. Who would you like in week 1, purely from a structural perspective? Offense, defense, special teams. How do you assess an NFL season without a traditional offseason? Not to mention a lot of new guys, right? This is why Brady probably has been so aggressively wanting to get his receivers out and work and practice and everything else, because if you're a new quarterback or you got new talent to try to integrate, it's going to be a lot harder than ever before.
Yeah, I think you have to segment this up a little bit by kind of where on the field you are. Like in the trenches, the defensive line and linebackers are going to be far ahead of the offensive linemen. I mean, there's just – it's something that happens in practice, early in practice, when you put pads on. The defense is just ahead of the offense. Like, the offensive line is a position that needs kind of practice and hitting and technique work, and we're not going to get any of that in camp this year. So I would look at that. But on the flip side, you mentioned tackling. It's going to be really, really poor. And sometimes it's easy to get the ball in the hands of your wide receivers and let them run, right? And I think that offenses will do that. But what I'm looking for early on, Clay, is veteran teams. When I saw the kind of schedule come out for camp a couple days ago, I bet the Chiefs over win total and the Ravens over win total. Like I never bet overs, but like that, like those two teams are veteran teams that have the same coaching staff, that return almost all their starters, that don't need, I mean, in theory, like they're just kind of mentally don't need all the practices that another team does. I bet the Panthers under they only return like 50% of their starters from last year, brand new coaching staff, brand new young defense, 7 draft picks on defense. I think veteran teams to me are the ones that really will succeed early in the season.
Good stuff, as always, Geoff Schwartz. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Thanks for joining us on Friday, and good luck keeping the pool from flooding.
I'm doing my best, buddy. Have a good one.
Hey, you too.